Yeah, let me get that. No, we don't want to do that. Well, welcome back, everyone, to our monthly edition of the Gordon Report. Let me figure out where my button is here so I can remove our slide that's covering our
faces.
There we go.
Oh,
so, again, welcome back to our monthly edition of the Gordon Report. Appreciate everybody being here. Welcome back, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. And this is a special edition of our Job Shock. We've been doing this for, I think, 3 months now. And each month we're rolling out a new portion of Ed's new white paper that he's been working on for quite a while. And so we're really excited to get all the updates here and have a conversation with him about that. And it's been an incredibly busy month. It seems that, Ed, you're not the only person working on this, some of the largest groups in the world are studying this research. I know McKinsey came out with the report in the last couple of weeks, Boston Consulting you mentioned, and a few others. So, but we're going to be talking about what you've been digging up and finding, and some comments. And we're going to focus today on manufacturing. Before we get there, if you're in the comments, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, let us know where you're calling from. If you have any questions for us, for Ed, please put them in. We'll try to keep up with those. We've got a short time here, but if you got a question, please let us know. I'll try to keep up with the comments on that. If not, we'll make sure that at least one of us gets back to you afterwards. So if there's something you say that you agree with, you disagree, or if you have a question for a future show or something to explore, please let us know. Before I dive into this, I just want to talk about two brief announcements. One is having a webinar about adaptability. I know Ed wrote about this in his current Gordon report as well, not the webinar, but about the critical skill of adaptability. So there's a lot we're talking about every single day. There's another article about resilience and grit and growth mindset. And adaptability is really a combination of all those. And I've got a few, we have a panel discussion. It's not just me talking that day. The panel discussion is going to be Russ Thornley from AQAI. He's a co-founder of a group that's done a tremendous amount of research on the adaptability quotient. We've got Heidi Spierge, who is the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer from Cornerstone On Demand, which is a big focus of what they're doing on adaptability as well. And I've got two more surprise guests that we're trying to finalize the time. So that is March 24th, 11 a.m. It's free. There is one SHRM credit if you're interested in that, but hopefully you'll be able to participate. And then the second thing is, if you're not a member of Googlization Nation yet, please go up to googlizationnation.com. And it's free. Each week I send out an update about events like Job Shock today in the Gordon Report, about who is a guest on our weekly podcast, about the webinars that we're going to be having. And it's shaping up to be a very busy year. So if you want free updates and also other events and other releases that are coming out, go to googlizationnation.com. And again, all we need is your first name and an email, and you'll start getting some of those updates. So that's wonderful. So Ed, let me kind of go back and bring up something here. Let's jumpstart this. Well, before we do that, let's talk about Job Shock.
Yes.
What some of you, especially with some gray hair or less hair, may remember Future Shock, which was written about in 1970 by Alvin Toffler. And he talked about a time when we would be all stressed out. Human beings would be completely stressed out because of the pace of change. And we would start seeing lots of symptoms. So how similar, or how does Job Shock fit into that?
Well, one of the things he mentioned that was of great importance is that part of future shock would be the fact that we would have to have a much better trained and educated workforce, and that we were basically facing significant shortages of skilled people. And that's what Job Shock is about. And now the COVID-19 pandemic, the globalization, the demographic shift, the fourth industrial revolution have all basically shaped up together so that by 2030, we will have significant numbers of vacant jobs and a major negative impact on the growth of the U.S. economy.
So job shock is what? I mean, how would you describe it in like one sentence to someone?
That the U.S. workforce is so tragically underskilled and undereducated that we are going to have a severe contraction of the U.S. economy by 2030, and that a large part of this will also be seen around the world.
So that fits in line, and a lot of times dollars speak, money speaks, and we talk about contraction, and people think about their job loss.
At least a $4 trillion contraction of the U.S. GDP by 2030.
Okay. And
there are other predictions that it'll even be larger. And that was before COVID. All right.
And this is a separate, and this is related, but a separate number is the learning gap that we're experiencing. This fits in well into the lower skilled jobs that people used to be able to get, even if they only had a GED or a high school education. But I believe it was McKinsey. So if it wasn't, I apologize to the organization that spoke about this. But there was an education report that was released, and they said the learning gap widened to the point last year, especially in the lower economic areas for kids. The learning gap increased to the point where 10 years from now, when they will be our workforce, there will be a loss of between 170 billion to 270 billion dollars a year on GMP.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking 170 billion to 270 billion dollars loss on GNP, just related to the learning gap because of this lost year in education.
Right. And remember, that's the pipeline feeding into the U.S. workforce. And already next month, we'll be talking about the consequences of this. So I don't want to jump ahead, but next month we'll also basically show that only about a third of the current U.S. workforce is ready for the fourth industrial revolution.
Right. So this is somewhat related. This was a slide I pulled out from McKinsey, and again, I know you've got you've got very similar statistics to this. But we're just going to need a lot more educated people, and it doesn't mean that everybody. And again, when we say educated, this does not mean we're suggesting to everyone or even to many that we need a college education.
Correct.
We're talking about we need education beyond high school, and oftentimes it has to be specialized. But you can see here, where the increases are. There's another slide here. Number of workers that are going to be moving to another occupation because a lot of the jobs that they're doing. You can pull all this up on the McKinsey reports, but again, very, very important, what that trend is.
We're covering this in Job Shock, and the key is people need to learn how to learn in elementary and high school so that you can build specific career skills on top of it in post-secondary education and training. Mm-hmm. And last year, not only were the kids out of school and we lost a year of school, but companies radically cut back on current training programs for their in-house staff, as well as they canceled out any different types of entry-level job training. So they're like two oars in a boat here. They are pulling the talent pool of the U.S. either forward or backward. Part of it is the education of kids before they get to school, and the other part of it is continuing lifelong learning by businesses for their workforces.
So we want to focus on manufacturing jobs today.
Yes.
We can talk about every sector that there is. I thought this was fascinating because if you look at the headlines, certainly we've had we've been hovering around that 700,000 to 900,000, jobs, unemployment each week. But ultimately, the overall headline is that people are struggling and they're out of work. But if you look at this, of increase in job postings, which means that people are looking. This is since a year ago.
Yes.
This is since a year ago. So this was right at the point of the pandemic starting. Look at the lead here. Look at manufacturing. Look at construction. These don't necessarily require 4-year college degrees and masters, certainly for some roles. These are the jobs you've been talking about for 20 some years. Yes. that we were going to come up at this precipice, at this cliff, as this meltdown is the word you use, at this meltdown. So despite the fact that we had this huge dip back here, there is actually an increase in the number of companies that are looking for jobs, which goes along with what the that you mentioned this in the Gordon report. The National Association of Manufacturers noted that there's going to be a shortage of 2.5 million manufacturing jobs.
Right. And now COVID-19 has spurred manufacturers to increase automation, to increase robotics. So they, in their idea, they are going to use fewer and fewer lower paid people. And if we pass a $15 minimum wage, which would help lower skilled workers in the short term, in the long term, it will merely speed this process up further in manufacturing. Here in Chicago, we have the Chicago Manufacturing Renaissance, which is trying to prepare more young people to enter high-end manufacturing. And that's where the shortages are, in high-end manufacturing.
So describe high-end manufacturing.
High-end manufacturing requires students to use computerized assisted machines so that they have the reading comprehension, the mathematical skills, the ability to comprehend what's going on in batch orders that they need to make. And they have those skills to also to work on teams. And that's computer assisted manufacturing. That's what it's all about. And that's going to grow. Also, we need technicians who can repair the robots. We also need people that have the ability to problem solve and think and innovate. That's what innovation is all about. Innovation is not just about technology. It's about the people behind the technology that can innovate using that equipment to make new products or services. And that's where the crunch is coming right now.
So that's so interesting you say that, because in order to innovate, and this fits into conversations and my studies, what we're doing with adaptability, is in order to innovate, you have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to unlearn things that we did, not only learn new skills, but unlearn what we did in the past. And we're gonna make mistakes along the way. And yet manufacturing were leaders in total quality management, Six Sigma, zero defect, which was the opposite. It was good. I mean, the quality improved, but they created what Taleb, Nissan Taleb, talks about as being a fragile. He talked about a fragile economy, but a fragile organization where you're so tight, you're so rigid, everything is programmed that when there is an event like a pandemic, everything collapses.
Yes,
it's fragile. It breaks,
right.
And you can't be fragile and innovate. It's impossible, because if you're fragile, you're not resilient. So part of this is not just about jobs. Part of this is about changing the cultures within the organizations. And you have the Apples and you have the Googles, and then you had a lot of manufacturing companies.
Yeah.
and they prided themselves on on the total quality management, the zero defects. But over the last few years, there's been so many disruptions that they've not been able to survive. So we need to change the culture. In order to, if you change the culture to an innovative culture, then they're going to be able to grow. But now we need a different type of a person, because we taught people to be rigid. If you follow our rules, if we could program you to do the same thing over and over every day, you'll have a career for life. And that, that certainly doesn't exist anymore. But that's my soapbox. So one of the things that we're talking about, that I think you mentioned the other day, or was something else I read, is that GM just announced that they're going to they're going to go all electric vehicle by 2035. Mm-hmm. And I assume, and that, I have the Tesla of the world. How is that going to impact these manufacturing jobs? I mean, I think there's a sense that it's going to eliminate jobs. I think it's going to be an explosion of jobs. But what's your take?
Well, there are different kinds of jobs, because now they're going to require different kinds of skills in order to put together the battery and the new technologies within those cars. And when you were talking just now, we were having the same argument in 1990 with earlier technologies. And that's when a book came out called The Fifth Discipline that talked about the learning organization. All right. And corporate universities, lifelong learning. We started talking about human capital. And then around the mid 1990s, that hit the brick wall. E-learning came in, short-term thinking came in, and hey, look, we don't have the talent. We'll ship the product to Germany. They have a lot of skilled technical people, or even Scotland, or hey, Boeing can have those wings on their new planes built in Japan. All right. Or we'll import the technicians from India, China, anywhere, to make up for the fact that we have a workforce that's turning into a bunch of techno peasants because they don't have the education to do the critical thinking. That's what you were just talking about. And now what's happened? Well, Ira, this is a worldwide problem. This is not a problem in the US. I do consulting on this worldwide. And guess what? We have shortages of engineers and technicians in Germany, in China, in India, and they all want to do the same things we want to do. And now, of course, politically speaking, there are people that want to stop that flow of high-skilled talent into the U.S. because Americans should have those jobs. Well, that's fine. But you know what? We don't have enough Americans who are capable of learning this because their foundational education has been so lousy. We have now a tragically underskilled and undereducated workforce. And the circuit breakers that have been used in the past to offload high-skilled jobs overseas, to import high-skilled talent into the U.S., are breaking down. And companies can't poach enough people anymore because the older people are retiring who had many of these skills. And the younger people simply don't have the comprehension skills in reading. They can't do the fractions, decimals, ratios. They don't have statistical process control. They can't do this. They can push buttons on a computer and then they're games. But when it comes to applying advanced knowledge to these advanced technologies to solve problems that make products, they can't do it. They don't have the thinking skills to do it. And the companies don't want to invest in giving it to them because they think it's too long term. We got to make a profit right now, this quarter. Money, we're not going to spend money on training. So what do you have? You have a big job shock. And the other shock is that businesses are leaving the U.S. Illinois is losing business right now because we have such a lousy workforce overall in Illinois. Companies are leaving.
Yeah, they were moving to Texas until last week.
Well, yeah. But, Texas is one of the worst K-12 systems of education in the United States. They have too few well-educated young people. They have some, but not nearly enough. Right. So we'll move people from Illinois and California into Texas. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, what's that going to do for the overall U.S. economy? I can tell you right now, it ain't going to work. It isn't going to work. All right. So this is a national crisis made worse now by COVID.
So if we go back to even thinking, and again, this message is probably for parents, not only employers, but people looking for jobs. What are they going to be in the future? Think about the electric car. Think about the movement toward an electric car. And people say, well, it's still a car. You're still going to be in manufacturing. But it's not. It's a moving computer. But then look at all the industries that go along with that, because the electric car, it's not just what it's powered by. It's going to be powered by a battery. So you have a whole industry, and the battery industry is going to be fascinating, where they thought Elon Musk was crazy that he was putting this fortune into changing batteries. The battery industry is incredible. So there's going to be a whole new industry that comes out, not of the batteries we buy, the types of batteries we buy in the store to put in, but these long-term batteries. But then it's all the support. And then how do we repair those? What about all the charging stations? But then you think about the cars, they're going to be safer. So we have these, whether we're fully autonomous or not, but we're going to have all these safety features. So now you have all it's computers, but basically all the, like NVIDIA is a screen. What are the screens that monitor this? What about all the sensor companies? What about building the roadways so that we have sensors? Who's going to manage the infrastructure for that? These are all the jobs that are going to be required to be able to do that. And if we don't create that electric car industry, or we don't create that automated industry, somebody else will.
Yes. And also go down to your local auto dealer. There's a chronic shortage in most regions of technicians who can repair the cars. Okay. Well, hey, a grease monkey, what do you need? Well, I have news for you. The manuals and computer screens to comprehend the information in there requires a 16th grade level of reading comprehension for those individuals to fix your vehicle now. And we have a severe shortage, a chronic shortage across the U.S. of technicians, of auto technicians.
Yeah. Again, and that's just one industry. So, talking about what manufacturing is going to look like, for anybody who thinks that manufacturing is this dirty factory job, again, message to individuals, employers, community leaders, government, basically the automotive industry, which has been a driver of our economy, it's a technology industry. It really is a technology form that just happens to make cars, just like Apple makes devices. GM is a technology company that's just going to happen to make automobiles and trucks.
What about Boeing? What about the aviation industry? Now, Boeing invests millions of dollars in training people to be aerospace technicians to assemble their airplanes. And in in South Carolina and in Seattle, they have partnerships with local technical schools to take people and train them through their training programs to work in those assembly plants. The problem they have, and the problem that many of the manufacturers have, is they can't find enough young people who have the skills to pass the training. They flunk out. They can't do it. And if they simplify the training, what is that going to do to quality control at Boeing? It's going to go down. So, as you just said a moment ago, it's not just the manufacturers. What about the parents who are encouraging their kids.
They're the worst enemy of some of these schools.
We're not talking about going to Harvard, Princeton, or Yale. We're not talking about going to a state college or university. We're talking about many kids have an interest in fixing things, building things, making things. And they have a high IQ, but that's their aptitude and interest. My dad was a carpenter. He built homes. He did repair work. He did that all his life. He was a good and very bright man. He made a good living. He had good math skills. All right. I didn't have those skills. I went a different direction. Doesn't mean that I'm bright and he's dumb, or he's bright and I can't drive a nail straight or install your kitchen, so I'm an idiot. No, it's just a question of aptitude and skills. Parents need to think of the same thing for their kids. What is their kids' interest? What are their skills? What are they good at? And what's the job outlook in that industry? And what kind of education are they going to need? All right. And it's not a question, again, that some kids who are going to become an auto tech, well, they're dumb. They don't need much of an education.
It's a fallback. It's a fallback.
Or an electrician. Right. Now, that's not true. All of these kids now need a decent education where they learn how to think, problem solve. This is not just for someone that's going to manage your pension fund. This isn't just the doctor who's going to figure out how to treat your cancer. This is for the people who are going to make the electrical equipment and man it so that you don't sit in the dark and freezing pipes when there's a storm. That's what we need. And we don't have enough of them in your community or anywhere in the country.
Right. Or it's keeping that the doctor's going to take an x-ray or do a surgery, but who's going to continue to operate? Somebody needs to fix the x-ray machines, keep those running, the labs running, the robots, the surgical units. So, hey, Ed, we're coming up pretty close to this. This goes amazingly fast when you and I talk. We had a really nice comment from Anne from something we talked about. I believe Anne's a friend of yours. And she said, nice definition of innovation. People need psychological safety to create. And that's what we were talking about before. So again, it's not only better education, it's not only training, but companies have to understand that in order to innovate, in order to grow, in order to be able to change with the times, they're going to have to become more comfortable, not with accepting mistakes. You can still have people, you can still have zero defect, but you've got to have processes that are a little bit more resilient, that give people opportunity to make improvements to that, to the process along the way. And part of that is education. So I know you have the retains. That's sort of what your role is helping communities, helping businesses, helping communities become more flexible with how they train people, becoming more, allowing people to become more current. So for a business, for a community, for a parent that's interested in getting involved, how do they do that?
Well, the regional talent innovation networks, whether they're called High School Inc. or the Vermilion Advantage or the New North, they're collaboratives between parents, educators, business people, politicians, and they're trying to repair and update the education to employment system so that kids can be more of them can get a good paying job, and that workers get retraining, and lifelong learning becomes something that everyone accepts, not as a burden, as something to be avoided or feared, because a lot of people fear education. We need to take the fear factor out if people want a decent job. Yep. And that's what people want. They want a good, high-paying job. And to do that, we're going to help our community's cultures to change, to accept this. Forget wishful thinking, guys.
Yeah, the only pathway to get there is not a 4-year degree anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
That's basically sums it up. I have Ed's information scrolling across the bottom. If you have other questions, you agree or disagree with Ed, you can reach him at imperialcorp.com. You can also sign up for the Gordon Report. You'll get that each month. And also when the Job Shock white paper is released, although we'll be releasing it in segments each month.
That's right.
We'll be back in March again. Continue conversation. Do you know what we're going to be talking about next month, Ed?
Yes, we're going to talk about the broader consequences of job shock and the remedies. We'll start talking a little bit about the remedies. So each month, the report is issued the same week as we do these programs, and you can get that on imperialcorp.com. Our email is imperialcorp@juno.com if you want to send me an email, or call here in Chicago 312-664-5196, and we'll be happy to speak with you as well.
Perfect. And we talked a little bit about adaptability. How does your organization prepare? Are your people, is your management team change ready? Do they have the resilience, the mental flexibility, what we call dealing with paradox? Do they have a growth mindset? Do they have the ability to, or how do they fare compared to others on the ability to not only learn, but unlearn? And how conducive is your environment to allowing people to change? Sometimes we talk about change, but the environment, the structure, the team support, the company support, the emotional support that you give just isn't there. We're going to be talking about all this on our webinar at the end of the month, March 24th. It's a Wednesday, 11 a.m. It's free. There's one SHRM credit if you're interested. If you're not, if you're just a business leader or somebody thinking about an employer ready to change their job, or not change your job, but change how your organization works in the new economy. Please, you can go up to bit.ly AQ March 24, or you can go to my website. It's actually a button right at the top of the screen, which is Success Performance Solutions. Ed, any final words until next month?
Well, my final words are, there's a future, and it's a bright one if we all learn to work together toward that future. And part of it will be, as Ira and I have been talking about, how well we adapt to this 21st century new workforce environment.
Yep.
And we're here to help you.
And thank you for those who shared comments. We just had a comment from, again, another friend of yours, Sue, and was creating greater access to career advancement for displaced workers. And again, that's, some part of this bigger picture of what we're all trying to do. So again, I thank everybody for participating, for your comments, for listening, for watching. Hopefully you'll share this message. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already, and you'll get this. I also have my weekly podcast, Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization, and each week we post it there as well, and a lot of other information, a lot of other topics that we talk about related to the future of work. So everybody, please stay safe. We're not out of the woods yet. Please keep your distances, get your vaccine if you're eligible and if you're able. And if it's available, and again, keep wearing your masks. And until next month, we'll be back with another Gordon Report, another issue of Job Shock. And don't let the shift hit your plans.